For more on the upcoming elections in Ukraine's east, I'm joined by Stephen Fish from San Francisco. He's a political science professor at the University of California-Berkeley. Stephen, welcome. Always good to see you. As you know, the West, Ukrainian authorities as well, have characterized the vote in eastern Ukraine as a step away from peace, not toward it. They say the elections are a violation of the Minsk agreements, which called for the elections in line with Ukrainian law in December. How will the newly elected leaders be viewed internationally?
Well, I don't think they're going to get much recognition internationally. Of course, the Russian government will recognize them. This is a Russian government project that's being done in collaboration, of course, with the pro-Russian rebels in East Ukraine. But other than in pockets of East Ukraine and in Russia, these elections will not be regarded as legitimate. They can't possibly be legitimate under the circumstances in which they're being held. These are breakaway territories being supported by a major foreign power. The big election that was held in Ukraine recently for an all-Ukrainian national government was legitimate. But this little election that's going to be held in little pockets of East Ukraine will certainly not meet international standards. We can predict that.
Well, is it likely eastern Ukraine will wind up like Georgia and Moldova, where some say Russia has a huge say? Is it likely the elections will even be fair and transparent, as our reporter reported?
Well, Susan, that's a good question. The elections will not be fair and transparent. The elections results are pretty much already predetermined. Whoever the rebels and the Russian government want to win are going to win. They're not going to lend them all that much legitimacy. So I don't think these elections really will go very far in that direction. Your question about whether Russia could be moving toward trying to do in East Ukraine what it's already done in bits of Georgia and in Moldova is a very good one. And I think that is the goal. I think the goal is to assert Russian hegemony, Russian dominance over parts of East Ukraine, the same way that Russia has done in the so-called Transnistria region of Moldova or in some small regions in Georgia as well. That already seems to be happening.
Alrighty. We know U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has issued some pretty harsh words regarding this vote on Sunday, but how will this affect the long-term relations between the United States and Russia?
You know, I don't think it's going to have a big effect. The fact is the damage is already done, given what Putin has already done in East Ukraine. These elections are just yet another kind of stage in a process that the United States and the European Union regards as profoundly illegitimate. I don't think it's going to have a big effect on U.S.-Russia relations. I do think, though, that the more that this kind of thing happens, that Putin and his people in East Ukraine stage these kinds of things, the more that Russia will be turning the rest of Ukraine, the other 90% of Ukraine, against Russia, and setting up a situation in which the people of the rest of Ukraine will be even more anti-Russian, even more staunchly against the Putin regime in Russia and against good relations with Russia than they would be otherwise. This kind of behavior on the part of Putin is pushing the rest of Ukraine toward the West. We can see that in the outcome of the legitimate election that was held nationally in Ukraine very recently. The parties that won are essentially centrist, pro-Western parties. The old extremist rump Communist Party did not do well. The fascists did not do well, the far right. It seems like the rest of Ukraine is heading now even more quickly toward the West than it would be otherwise. So it looks like Putin's strategy might be backfiring.
But does he even care at this point? I mean, isn't he just focused on the East there, Donetsk and Luhansk?
That's a good question. We don't know exactly what his priorities and strategy are right now. If he doesn't care about what the rest of Ukraine thinks, he's making a big mistake, because he can dominate little pieces of territory in East Ukraine. But if by doing so, he basically turns the rest of Ukraine, which is of course the large bulk of it, even more strongly against Russia, and makes the Ukrainian people and Ukrainian elites more intent on joining European institutions and more allergic to joining with Russia and cooperating with Russia, he's making a mistake that will redound to his harm in future years. So right now he might be focused on East Ukraine, but if in fact that's what he's doing, it's a short-sighted view.
Stephen Fish from the University of California-Berkeley. As always, thank you.
My pleasure.